Hello, and welcome back to the Middling Along podcast. My guest today is author of the book Be Your Number One Cheerleader, a career and confidence coach, Ekua Cant. Welcome along to the podcast.
Thank you. It's very good to be here.
So I thought it would be really interesting to hear from you your sort of journey to becoming a career coach. What was your path to get here?
Great. Yeah. So I think I had a pretty traditional career path, but then I decided I wanted to do other things. And I started to deviate from the path which I had laid out before me. So if I just start from the beginning, I went to Brunel University and I studied political science. I did A levels and I went to a college, and I was really excited about public service and really working to be the wind beneath the wings of politicians. I never had any aspirations to become an MP or be in the spotlight, but I always fancied helping them to deliver public service and really wanting to help people to really get the best out of what each government was striving to do. But along the way of doing working in the civil service, I found that I became interested in technology and sort of creating things and putting out ideas and really wanting to kind of explore different ways of working, but also different ways to kind of explore how you could have your career, and whether business might be something that would be applicable for me, or whether carrying on with full-time employment was the full-time pathway for me. I actually started my life as a personal assistant, first of all, initially in civil service. And then with my interest in tech, I trained to be a project manager, working on IT and digital projects, which was really fantastic. And I really got to be involved in some major projects, which I'm really pleased to be in. But that gave me that taste for that kind of tech space, that hankering to kind of, be involved in this project. So initially I did that as a side accompaniment to working in the civil service, and that was really great because I kind of got to be involved in the startup scene, get to meet with different people, and test some of my ideas. But at that stage I wasn't really ready to commit to going into full-time entrepreneurship. So I thought instead what I would do was test the waters by doing contracting and becoming a contractor in the IT and project management space, because that's something I really enjoyed, and I thought that would be where I'd want to kind of go if I didn't really take the leaps to be full-time in entrepreneurship. But as it went, I did do a stint as a contractor in project management, and I really enjoyed that stuff. But I still had that little voice back in my head was like, oh, you know what? You need to see if entrepreneurship could really work for you full-time. And I think what you need to do is make a plan to see how that can be explored. So obviously being a contractor, you get paid fairly well. Why don't you make a plan to kind of do a couple of contracts with the plan and the vision to kind of see if you can start your own thing, see how that goes. So that is what I did. And my startup that I was doing, that I worked on, was called DrinkSpot. And I mentioned that in my book. And that was a really creative startup. So what was the whole goal of that was to provide an inclusive drinks experience to offices in and around London, but also especially building on the co-working space that was kind of taking off. And also, that kind of wanting to celebrate success, but also wanting to kind of gel and give people the opportunity to kind of mix and socialize in the office space. But one thing that I noticed that was missing was the whole range of drinks wasn't that inclusive. So you have obviously different kinds of people in the workplace, both drinkers and non-drinkers. And what I found was there was a real sort of lack of thought in their participation in these events. So the idea was basically reach out to craft drink suppliers and to provide alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks, but really to provide a special concerted effort on drinks that were non-alcoholic but tasted really good and were high quality, and they weren't just sort of standard sort of sugary unthoughtful drinks. They were drinks that actually tasted nice and also kind of made the person feel more included and actually valued and thought of as someone, not just an afterthought, not just have the
here's the
orange juice or here's that standard fizzy beverage. So that was the whole idea there. So that that was startup also had a technological bent to it, and that bent was looking at this community called Slack, and that's like a messaging service where you can send messages to your colleagues, your team members online, but you can also invite them to events, and you can have like little apps and plugins. And our idea was to have a plugin into that community where you could order your drinks to your desk for your socials or your sort of celebrations. So yeah, that was really how that went. But as it goes, I spun a lot of plates in that startup. So I had a chatbot service, which I just explained, and then I had like an event service, which is all about providing you with drinks and waiters and everything you need for a drinks experience. And then because our company was called Drinkspot, I got excited by the future of perhaps having rather than having people serve you, having robots serve you drinks. And surprisingly, I did find a robot that could serve you drinks. And the concept there was to hire out this robot for massive corporate events and like really kind of like high end events. But I spread myself too thinly. And, had I concentrated on one thing, perhaps it would have worked out better. But it taught me a lot about, what you need to do in order to grow something and be sort of really sort of conscious about learning from your mistakes, asking for help and getting feedback. And those are some of the things that I mentioned in my book. But it brought me to the realization that what my genius is creating and sharing ideas, but also helping people to become confident in themselves, to give themselves permission to explore what's in their mind, what their dreams are, and not be beholden to the career path that they've taken for years and years and years, and to kind of give themselves different ways to explore those ideas that are safe and don't make them just leap. It gives them the opportunity to think about things in ways that they hadn't imagined. So like take baby steps and actually explore ideas in ways that give them the opportunity not to just kind of drop everything, but more of a phased approach to thinking about how they can transition and change, but also how they can learn about themselves and really understand if what they think, what they desire is truly what they desire, or whether it's symptomatic of something else, which they actually need to resolve and tackle. Because sometimes we're desiring and dreaming about other avenues for career paths or other kinds of work we want to do, but sometimes there's a fundamental issue that is actually to do with the workplace or ourselves or something that's in our environment, which we also need to look at. And it's about really understanding how to get to the heart of those issues and being gentle and compassionate with ourselves to give ourselves the space to expand and to explore where we want to go and how we want to move forward and discover if it's the right thing or not the right thing. But it doesn't really matter if that's the case. It's really that space to be non-judgmental, but to have the opportunity to not be afraid to explore all of the different facets that we're feeling and all the different ideas that we're having, and to get that sort of like gentle sort of like challenge and space to think about what you'd like to do.
You in your career coaching do specialize in midlife transitions, and I think for many of us when we're getting to that point maybe where we are having that sort of maybe existential crisis or at least kind of questioning and probing, maybe it's time for kind of quite a big change, a career change, or pivoting and doing something entrepreneurial. For some people, maybe even going kind of completely retraining and going into a new career. So how do you approach that with the clients, with the people that you work with?
Yeah, so I work with the ambitious woman who's sort of like very experienced, but they come to like a crossroads, and really it's about giving them the space to consider what's important to them in their lives and why, but also to really consider their career values. So that's one of the key things that we do before starting on thinking about going in any direction. It's first understanding where we are and what we actually value and what we don't, so that we can chart a course to where we're going. So I have these 3 career values, which I go through. The first one is intrinsic. So that's the values to help you feel motivated and fulfilled. And we talk about, what that means to them and explore questions that allow them to kind of consider that. And then secondly, there's the extrinsic values. So there's tangible rewards like wealth and social status, and like how does that fit into what they want to do. And then finally there's the lifestyle values, so what kind of lifestyle do they want, how does their career enable that. And then it's really to think about what is their why and their purpose, like what really makes them tick, what really has value and meaning to them, and what provides purpose to them in their lives. And that's both from a professional and a personal standpoint, because I think we can't separate the two. It's important to understand like how they fit together, so we sort of consider that. And then once we can understand what makes them thrive, and then really to think about that like deeply, and what really sort of drains them and what really doesn't sit well with them, and we create this picture, then we can think about, okay, where is it we might want to chart the course to next.
Fantastic. And how does it vary in terms of how many sessions people tend to have with you, depending on, I guess, how far along that in their thinking they already are, or how big of a change they might want to make? How many sessions do you sort of typically tend to do with somebody?
Yeah, I think it's really like up to the individual, and like working. It's not like a widget factory, because some people are, as you said, advanced in their thoughts, and some people are sort of more they just have that inkling and they need sort of more sort of space and guidance. So it could be one session, it could be 3, but it's really just about actually giving time and space for that person to kind of get to understand the key things around their career values, so that they really are clear. Because I think there's, as I said, there's a lot of issues that can be sort of involved in that sort of restless feeling, or that feeling of wanting to change, that need to be sort of unpicked carefully before you proceed. And I think sometimes it's a good chance for people to kind of reflect on what they've done in their career, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and then for them to kind of think about, well, actually, what is it that I now want this next segment to be about, and how does that fit with the rest of my life that I'm planning, and how to kind of architect that. So yeah, I think it's variable, but it kind of follows the same sort of principles, but it depends. The level of depth depends on the level of thinking, or the stage of thinking that the person is at.
Yeah, and I think it's almost like we have to give ourselves that permission to take time out of kind of busy schedules, whether that's career or family or a bit of both. And yeah, I think just carving out that specified time to do that work is so important. I think it's very easy to kind of spend a lot of time in your head thinking about what ifs, but actually to sort of have dedicated hour or 90 minutes or kind of sort of structured sessions to unpick all of that, as you said, and really delve deep and then put it all back together again is really something that I think a lot of us would benefit from. You talk in the book about forming positive mental mind muscle. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how you sort of encourage that as sort of part of the coaching that you do?
Yeah. So if I just briefly explain what the book is about, how that fits in. So the book is called, as you said, it's called Be Your Number One Cheerleader. And that whole book is about applying entrepreneurial principles to your career and to your business, if that's the way that you want to go. But the whole thing about building your positive mental mind muscle is really about being conscious of how you think, and the kind of thoughts that dominate your mind. Because a lot of the time we kind of don't really notice and become complacent about how we think, and we think that how we're thinking is serving us. But actually, if we step back to think about how we think, we start to realize that actually the thoughts that I'm thinking don't actually advance where I want to go, or the thoughts that I'm thinking are not actually sort of giving me the opportunity or the space to think in ways, to think more creatively and more dynamically. They're just kind of my fears, and actually my fears aren't going to help me move forward. What I need to do is focus on how I can be proactive and solutions focused, and that really is about opening your mind to framing things more optimistically, in the can sense, and even just, giving yourself that room to kind of understand that even if something doesn't work out, or even if something is negative, it's not the end of the world. It's about having that confidence to try and to put yourself out there and to learn from those things, and having that mindset that actually every time you're moving forward, and you're taking a step forward, taking action, you are moving towards building that positive like resilience and that positive like attitude. And it's not about sort of denying, think when things are wrong, or denying that you have negative thoughts, but it's being conscious to challenge those thoughts and to really work hard to actually think thoughts that are more helpful. And maybe that you might want to, use positive affirmations or meditation, but really things that help you to get into that zone where you're feeling that confident, and you're feeling hopeful, and you're really working to believe that everything that you're doing is actually serving you to move forward and positively, rather than just holding on to those negative things and just having that pity party, which doesn't really help. I mean, yes, I think that you need to take time to process negative emotions and situations as they arise, but it's really about limiting that time, and really taking the conscious effort to be like, okay, that didn't work, it wasn't as I expected, but here it is actually what went well, and here is where I can learn, and here is how I can actually move forward to do that like differently.
I think, yeah, there's that it's very easy to have those sort of inner critic, the kind of the critical voices overwhelming, rather than just sort of objectively looking at something and saying, okay, what can I take from this experience? Just because it didn't work doesn't mean that my idea is terrible, or everything's going to be a complete failure. What are some simple ways that, from your experience, that we can build our self-confidence and tackle those limiting beliefs?
Yeah, so one of the things that I would say is practice and action as the two watchwords for building confidence. Because in order for you to feel more confident, or to feel safer in doing something, you need to actually do it. I think that what really interesting about building confidence is that a lot of the time fear strangles us, and it really kind of makes us be inactive, and it really sort of hampers our progress. But actually, if we take steps to start to practice that action, or to find a way to get involved in a situation where we can de-stress our fears and de-stress what it is that we want to do, then I think that really helps us to build confidence in doing that. So I think that finding a space to practice with a friend, a colleague, or just by yourself, but taking the action to actually do it, and having that mindset that actually it's not about perfection, it's really about putting yourself forward, attempting it, and having that learning attitude, and that growth mindset. And I think that is one of the ways that you can really like build confidence. But I think another way, which is really important, is starting your day well, and starting it with a positive frame of mind. Because if you start your day with positive thoughts, and you open yourself to that zone of being creative, of being positive, whether that's your yoga, your meditation, or exercise, or whatever it is that you do to get yourself into that frame of mind, where you go into the day where you're open to putting yourself out there, you're open to learning, you're open to attempting things. That attitude and that practice helps to build your confidence, because you become less fearful of things going wrong, because you accept that as part of having that growth mindset attitude, you need to take action and take steps, even if it's a small step. By doing those small steps, it's a cumulative effect, which will obviously build your confidence and help you to reach the goal. And then the one that I love is actually celebrating your wins, and really tuning yourself to accepting, because it's funny that actually a lot of people have a difficult time accepting that they have been successful before they've reached the end goal. There's a lot of fixation about the end and not actually the journey that it takes to get there, which is interesting, because we can't just get there in one fell swoop or one big step. It takes some time and some energy and some effort to actually get to the end goal. So we have to recognize that as we are striving and as we are building towards that goal, that we are moving forward and that we should celebrate those successes, and that will help us to feel more optimistic and confident as we move forward and to the end. And even if some things go wrong, we are taking that learning attitude and approach, and it's really building our confidence by accepting that sometimes we do win, but we don't have to wait for it to be the end before we think that we've had that little victory. And I think that is something that's really important, and that can be sort of really powerful for people, because they tend to think that if they haven't got there, then there's no point in celebrating. But if you haven't got there and you're still taking steps to get there, then it's worth acknowledging your effort, and that will help keep you motivated. Whereas if you're only going to be celebrating at the end, then you're going to sort of feel, yes, you might still feel motivated, but I think that it's harder for you to kind of see that end in sight, because you seem so far away. But whereas if you're accepting, the steps that you're taking are progressing you, and you're having that thought that, yes, great, I have done this step, I've done this step, and that's moving me forward, that just keeps the sort of momentum and the energy going a bit better. So I really encourage people to think about celebrating those wins, as alien as it might be. It's not something, well, it's true, because
definitely I think for women, we're not used to bigging ourselves up or kind of shouting about our achievements. We just don't, well, for many of us, we don't grow up doing that kind of in kind of either a school sphere or a work sphere, and it's almost like you've got to learn to get over that icky, uncomfortable feeling of going, look at me, look what I've achieved.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing. I think that there's like a big dimension with women and visibility and cheering for themselves and really feeling confident in putting themselves out there, because there have been messages in society around a woman's place and how women ought to act, behave, and how if women are seen, if women are taking up more space than perhaps maybe traditionally seen to be as acceptable, then somehow they are stepping out of line, or they are being boastful. But actually, if you think about it, that is not the case. It is, yes, these are some ideas that have prevailed for a while, but I think we come to a different space with feminism and women's rights and equality, that we now need to encourage more women to take up more space, and to understand that being part of the solution is putting their hand up and saying what they have done, and sharing their journey, and not being afraid to do that, because in so doing they are helping other women to see that it's okay, and that it's right, and it's not bad. But also, this is a way that women are preventing themselves from getting career progression, because it's all very well, and it's a thing that I hear quite a lot. It's all very well saying, yes, you're doing a great job, you're getting good feedback, but if no one is hearing about it who is higher than you, or who has the power to really give you the opportunities, or to allow you to step up the ladder and to go into those leadership roles, or to be in the rooms that you want to be in, then you're not going to progress. Part of that is that being able to say, I have done this, and it was me, and I'm happy to say no, but it's absolutely
no. I've seen it many times in my own personal experience of the people who are get out there and do kind of almost like self publicize, right? You those are the ones that people will take, pay attention. They're like, oh, and they're the ones that get the opportunities. So yeah, it's absolutely true that no one's going to do it for you.
no, exactly. But I think the other thing that I advocate is, there are different ways to be out there. You can write, you can publish, you can speak. I feel what I really want to encourage people, women especially, to think about is being visible doesn't have to be being in your face. Think about the different ways that you can still show what you have done in a way that feels authentic, in a way that still reaches more people than it would be when you don't say anything and you don't share.
Especially if you're sort of more on the introverted end of the scale, and don't kind of feel comfortable putting yourself out there in the kind of traditional sense.
No, absolutely. And one of the ways I think is also really helpful is to be interviewed. That way it's just been no pressure on you. All you're doing is answering questions and showing your knowledge. And at the same time, you're building your profile. If you volunteered to be on a podcast, or you volunteered to be as part of a panel, you're being asked questions. You're not just going out there creating your own 1 hour YouTube channel, which you could do. By all means, I recommend that if you want to do that. But my point is, though, if you are a shyer person, you could put yourself out there by being involved in public events where you're speaking about what you are passionate about or what you want to share, so that people know that all these fantastic things about your field and your industry.
So I will obviously, when I'm sharing the podcast, I'm going to share a link to your book, which is available through Amazon, and to your website. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you and work with you, they'll be able to find you that way. Any sort of closing thoughts for people who are maybe considering doing some kind of career coaching, but kind of maybe on the fence about it?
Yeah, I think that now is the time. I think with the coronavirus and all that's happened in the last year, I think it's really made people think about, their work-life balance and what it is they want to do with their life. And it's worth just, exploring those options. Doesn't have to be a coach, it could be a mentor, or with a coach. But I think that they should give themselves permission to actually just explore what's in their mind. And it doesn't mean they have to commit to anything, but I think that at least giving themselves the opportunity to just actually figure out what they value, and then deciding whether they then want to take it further and work with a coach, or whether they want to then, chart their own course using self-help and resources. I really encourage them to actually not be afraid to think about what they're feeling, and then to share that with someone that they trust, and to think about how that conversation can be developed and whether they need to seek out additional support to do that.
Fantastic. Ekua, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been a real joy chatting to you again today.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to the Middling Along podcast. Do remember to subscribe to be notified when our next episode is live. And why not visit the blog at www.midlingalong.com to sign up to my newsletter as well. I do hope you enjoyed listening today. If you did, I'd be really grateful if you would consider leaving a short review, as that helps people find the podcast and helps get it noticed. Hope you can join us next time. Goodbye for now.